Casual magic is about how we find beauty in the mundane everyday. We tend to look forward to the 1% of days in our lives to find joy, like looking forward to the birthday, the wedding, the job promotion. But honestly, 99% of our lives are just in the mundane everyday. The same routines, the same kind of people. And how sad would it be if we only chose to experience joy in our lives 1% of the time? Casual magic is about looking for these tiny moments in every day that are casually magic, like having a herbal tea in the morning, or noticing that a stranger has held the door open for you and just appreciating the act of kindness. If you're listening to this, then hi, welcome. Welcome to episode 1. This is the planted seed. This is the start of the new project, and I'm so honoured that you're here. I'm kind of terrified, not gonna lie. You're gonna have to bear with me on this learning journey of having a podcast, but welcome. Okay, I have a challenge for you, and I feel like it's kind of a hard challenge in 2024 when there's constantly a million amazing things that we can watch and listen to. Like, I sometimes have this really bad habit of listening to a podcast and kind of also scrolling at the same time. But I find that whenever I fully commit my attention to one thing, I get so much more out of it. So I really want to invite you to be fully here. I dare you to put do not disturb on your phone, or to, I don't know, not scroll while listening to this. If you know that you have to get off the bus in one stop, like maybe listen to something else. Like, I really want to invite you to be fully present so that you can get the most out of this safe space time and really, just take a moment to settle in the otherwise like hectic whirlwind of our lives. And I really hope that you come away from this feeling more relaxed and more human. So, at the start of every episode, I want to take the time to invite you to do a very short meditation. I promise it's only like 1 to 2 minutes, but I just have this vision of all of us, no matter where we are in the world, no matter what has happened in our day, right? Like maybe you're at uni in Germany, or maybe you're on your like work break in Australia. Like, no matter where you are, imagine all of us taking just these 1 to 2 minutes to sit and be here, to be present wherever we are, and to really just breathe together. So if you've never meditated before, don't worry, it's not scary. It doesn't need to be perfect, or you don't need to have like a life epiphany. We're literally just going to breathe for 1 to 2 minutes, and I hope that you come back feeling lighter and clearer and just, ready to be in this space and this conversation with me. Take a second to notice where you are in space. Are you in a room? If so, how big is the room? Are you outside? What can you see? And if you feel comfortable to do so, gently close your eyes. Start to become aware of your breathing. Notice where you can feel the breath in your body, maybe noticing the rise of your chest and belly at the inhale and fall on the exhale. Imagine yourself rooting down into the ground, feeling centered and aware. Notice if you're carrying tension anywhere in your body. Relax your jaw, relax your shoulders, and if you can, try to allow that tension to release at the exhale. You can even visualize it if it helps. We're going to take a final 4, 6, 8 breath, where you'll take a deep inhale for 4, hold it for 6, and then exhale for 8. When you're ready, deep inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1, and hold at the top for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and big exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now take a little scan of your body, notice any sensations in the body, and if your eyes were closed, please open them gently. Welcome to the episode. Welcome back. Okay, so hopefully you're feeling a little bit cozier in the space, and I think it's time to properly introduce myself. Maybe you've watched my videos before, maybe you have no idea who I am. So I'm going to give you a little intro. Hi everyone, my name is Jade, and you might know me online as Unjaded Jade. I started a YouTube channel 7.5 years ago, which is crazy, and the whole meaning of Unjaded Jade is because my whole life, the closest adjective to my name was jaded. I don't know if you know what jaded means, but it basically means very bored, unenthusiastic, just unmotivated for life. And I was always so sad growing up that was the closest thing to my name. So yeah, I decided to reclaim jaded and be unjaded. So I hope that you get some of that unjaded energy today. And I started a YouTube channel with no intention of ever being a YouTuber or one day having a podcast like this. I actually started because when I was doing my GCSEs, I was very stressed and didn't really know how to study, and I remember going onto YouTube and looking to see if there was any student who had shared their tips, because I'm the oldest child, my parents didn't go to uni, and I went to kind of an average school where I didn't get that much help on study tips, and there was no one sharing study tips online. And so when I finished my GCSEs and did quite well, I was like, oh my gosh, I can be this person for some other student who is struggling and stressed, and hopefully give them some advice so that they realize it's not as scary as you think it is when you're 16 and GCSEs feel like the end of the world. And that's how I got into StudyTube. And yeah, I just started posting everything from revision tips to study with me's, where I'd literally film myself just revising for 2 hours as motivation for other people to come and study with me. And I think I kind of found this niche that was very needed at the time. And 2 months into having a channel, I went from 400 subscribers to 10,000 in a week, which was very life-changing and crazy as someone in year 12 doing their A-levels. And yeah, over the years, my content has shifted a lot. So I mainly made study content when I was doing my A-levels, and then I ended up taking a gap year, which for someone who was very theoretical and non-practical and had no common sense and knew nothing about I don't know how to get trains alone or anything, taking a gap year was such a huge step in going outside of my comfort zone. And my content shifted from learning in a classroom to what can you learn from the world around you. And I went solo interrailing. I won an interrail pass from the EU back when we were part of the EU, and it just opened my eyes and changed my world so much. And I vlogged a lot of that journey online, and that led me to finding this very unique university called Minerva, where I basically studied in 6 countries across my 4-year degree with the same cohort of 200 people. So I studied in Taiwan and Argentina and Korea and Berlin, and a lot of my content has been kind of vlogging that journey and reflecting on the growth that I've been able to have throughout that journey. And I graduated last year, so the doom of the post-grad life has been very real. I've been feeling a lot of uncertainty, but I'm kind of entering my spiritual soft girl era as someone who has always been very hustly and work oriented. I'm allowing myself to be softer and to give myself time to work out what I want to do in my life. And I think this podcast comes at such a beautiful time, because I really want to reflect on this intersection of being someone who is ambitious and wants to do incredible things in the world, but also wants to be truly content, and how those things can sometimes be at opposition with one another. And yeah, I've just been reflecting so much on what contentedness looks like, how to make every single day of your life an object of joy, and falling in love with the small parts of every day. So the idea of casual magic has been one of the few themes of my content that has come through every era with me, like the StudyTube era, Jade at university, and me navigating the uncertainty of my 20s. Like I've always loved this concept and talked about it a lot online, and really orienting to finding authentic joy and happiness in the small parts of every day rather than just in the big achievements, like getting good grades at school or, you know, getting like a fancy sounding job. Really focusing on like what makes every day amazing and beautiful. So why am I starting a podcast? Well, I have always loved the medium of long form. Like the world is increasingly becoming short form oriented, you know, like we're here, we're scrolling through these little moments, and there's something stressful about it. Like, don't get me wrong, I do love a good TikTok, like a good comical TikTok, like love it, but there's something so rich and special about the depth that long form allows. I don't know if you've heard of Happy Place by Fern Cotton, but it's one of the podcasts that has like served me the most as I've been growing up, and is a podcast where Fern will have very like human and real conversations with people in a way that always leaves me feeling more human and more optimistic. And I would love to create a space that feels like Happy Place, but for more of a Gen Z audience, or exploring themes that feel more relevant to me, you know, like navigating your 20s is something that podcast is focused more on, kind of like midlife. So that's a big inspiration. And the way that this podcast is going to work is alternating episodes. Of one episode is going to be me rambling about life and being existential with myself, and then I'm gonna have a paired episode with my solo episode where I sit down with someone and I pick their brain on that topic and their life, and invite them to share what makes them authentically happy, what is their casual magic, no matter what they've achieved, like the incredible titles they might hold, like what actually is it that gives them joy in their daily lives. And yeah, I'm just so excited to explore these conversations. I absolutely love people. There's so many incredible people I can't wait to have on here, so it's gonna be good. I'm like a bit nervous. It's just, I don't know, it's a bit scary sitting here with this dramatic mic, but it's gonna be good. If you've been following me for a while, you would also know that I love mindfulness. I love everything like yoga and meditation and journaling and introspection. And I don't know, I just feel like the older you get, the less these things are valued. Like we tend to value career success and the hustle and the achievements more and more, and like how things sound to other people. And so I really want to create a space that encourages you to be mindful, you know, like starting every episode with a little meditation. At the end of every episode, I'm going to ask you to set an intention for the coming week and almost have this journaling moment to reflect on your existing week. And I'm also going to encourage you to send me your moments of casual magic. So we're going to create this community platform, probably on Instagram. Maybe it exists. I haven't made it yet, but if it exists, I'll include it here somewhere on screen. Yeah, and it really will encourage you to look for these beautiful moments in your everyday and like have accountability to send them somewhere, and then we'll show it. So there's like this whole community feeling. I know this sounds dramatic, but I almost want to serve up my vulnerability on a little plate for you, because I don't know, I feel like with social media, it can be a wonderful place, but it can also be kind of a comparative and somewhat toxic place at times. And you forget that we're all just human and we're all struggling in different ways, and we all are going through the waves of life. And I really want to commit to you now that I'm going to do my best to show up here actually vulnerable, and to like show you the many dips of my life, and to encourage you to own wherever you are in your journey as well, and like maybe even offer up your vulnerability to people in your life, or like to share your stories with the community here. I just think there's so much value and richness in the less good parts of life too, and I hope that all the guests that come on will also feel empowered to be vulnerable and like share their stories with you in meaningful ways. So I guess that my biggest hope for this podcast is that it gives you a certain feeling, a feeling that you want to come back to, a feeling of reminding you of your humanity, reminding you that it's okay to struggle, reminding you that not every day has to be the best day of your life in order to hold so much value and richness. I hope that this is a space that reminds you to find the joy in the mundane parts of your daily life. And yeah, that no matter which guests we have on, no matter what I'm talking about, you'll want to come here because of how it makes you feel. Okay, so what is casual magic? Maybe you've heard of me talking about it before, but it's basically the idea of just small things in your everyday that are casually magic. So some people call these glimmers, other people call them like little joys, but I love the term casual magic. I actually first heard these words said by my friend and YouTuber, you should follow her, called Ali Sheehan. Shout out to Ali. But yeah, I just think casual magic is such like a beautiful phrase to capture it. So, you know, most of the time we're looking forward to things in life that are like huge. We're looking forward to the day that we open our exam results and realize that we've got all A stars because we're intelligent queens, or, you know, that moment when you've like finally worked for this job and you get it, or your wedding, like all these big moments of life. But the thing is, when we're constantly living in anticipation of the joy that we'll feel in those big things, we're actually not that happy in the process and in the journey. So casual magic is all about reorienting your idea of what you find happiness in. You know, it costs nothing to just take an extra second to notice what is around you and try and find something beautiful in it. So imagine maybe you've missed the train, you're at the train station, and rather than dwelling in the fact that you've missed the train, you can actually just take an extra second to notice something that is beautiful around you, like maybe the way that the light is hitting the platform, or you can look around at the people around you and just think about how similar we are, how we're all going along our days and we all actually have similar worries and similar desires in life, and yeah, we're actually much more similar than we all think. I invite you right now, wherever you are, to try and find something that is casually magic. So for me, I'm just looking around the room and I'm noticing the texture of these leaves. There's these plants that you can't see out of shot. I am a plant mum. I do love a plant. And I don't know, they're just such like rich green, and the texture almost looks, it's so shiny. Like I just want to go over and like touch these leaves. Or even the texture of this wall. Like something about it is just very satisfying. But also I'm lucky enough to have like a wonderful team around me, and just kind of like taking a moment to appreciate them being here. It's just, yeah, it's very special. So whatever it is, just take that moment to tag something in your experience as magic. It's crazy how much just focusing on the beauty of what's around you rather than the stress, that just changes your entire perspective on the day. And if you keep doing that day after day, eventually that changes your perspective on your life. Casual magic is literally a tool to rewire your brain for happiness. It is a tool to train your brain to search for beauty in your everyday. And I studied cognitive science at university, so I'm very passionate about learning about the brain. And I don't know if you know this, but the brain is extremely malleable. Like, it's genuinely fascinating how much the brain can change and rewire itself based on the thoughts that you're thinking, the stimulus that you give it in your external environment. And guys, you can literally rewire your brain through this process called long-term potentiation, which is a bit of a mouthful, so you can call it LTP. And LTP was one of my favorite things that I learned about during uni. It's basically this idea that when we have a thought is created by neurons in your brain firing together. So one neuron fires to another neuron, and that's how you're thinking a thought like, oh, the sky is really beautiful. But the thing is, the more that you think a certain thought, the more that these neurons fire to the same other neuron, you're strengthening that connection in a way that it's easier for you to access that same thought again in the future. So the more that you fire across neurons, the stronger that pathway is, the easier it is to fire them again. So one way you can think about this is if you were to enter a field of long grass, and there's one defined path that you can see where the grass has sort of been trampled down. You can think of that as the thought process that is easiest for you to think. It is easiest for you to walk through that field on that defined path. And the more that people use it, the easier it is to continue walking that path, the more that the grass is trampled down. But if you are trying to change the way that you think, if you are trying to learn to think through different thought processes, that is like having to wade through the long grass in the field to create a new path. And so the first few times that you are walking that path, it's difficult. It requires effort. Maybe it feels so inauthentic in your daily life to find beauty. Like maybe it's a miserable rainy day in London and everything just looks so grey, and the thought of finding beauty in this is like pure sarcasm. Like that's fine, that makes sense. The first time that you're finding beauty, it's gonna feel difficult, it's going to feel inauthentic. But the more that you are asking your brain to do that thought process of, what can I notice that is beautiful? What can I notice that is casually magic? The more that you are training that pathway, those neurons to fire in a way that makes it easier every single time. And eventually, in that field metaphor, as you are starting to trample down a new pathway of grass, that one becomes easier to access than your original pathway. So if the original pathway was maybe like pessimism, sadness, and stress about your life, the less that you're thinking down that pathway, the more you're thinking down the one of optimism. You just, over time, that becomes the default one. Obviously, this is a big oversimplification. I'm not saying that positivity and joy is literally just thinking happy thoughts. Like, it's not. But, like, this is how the brain works, Like, the more that you ask yourself to find joy in your everyday life, the easier that process does become, no matter who you are, no matter what your brain looks like. And so I think there's something quite empowering about that, how you can consciously orientate yourself around goodness and positivity. Just to really hammer it home, one more example. So in that field, you've got the defined path that you're always walking down, that you're always thinking down. If for you, that is being more prone to negative self-talk or kind of limiting beliefs about yourself and your capacity for love and success, then you kind of have to start small, right? It can be very small things to try and rewire onto that new path. It can look like saying positive affirmations to yourself in the mirror. Like when you notice a negative thought about your body, it can be catching that thought and instead trying to find something beautiful about your body and repeating that to yourself. I am worthy of love. My body is beautiful just as it is. And every time you're saying those things to yourself, even though maybe you don't necessarily believe it at the start, you are slowly building this new path through the field, through the tall grass. You are slowly bringing that new neural pathway into your brain so that when you look at your body, when you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't just have the negative self-talk as an option, you also have this other option of the more positive pathway that you're trying to build. And it's just so empowering knowing that you can make those tiny, tiny, small steps through that field towards more confidence, more joy, and more power showing up and taking more space in the world. Okay. So another one of my favourite things that I learned in my degree as I continued to learn about the brain is that the world kind of doesn't actually exist. We think it does, but in reality, we actually all shape our own totally unique version of the world in such a way that one world does not exist. We're actually all just living in our entirely unique version of the world because we are taking in all this stimuli, all this external stimulus from the world, colors that we see, people we see, languages that we hear, everything. We take it into our brains, and our brains will process all this stimuli through the lens of our past experiences, what we know, our biases, our understanding of ourselves and the world. And that is what we take away meaning from. So nothing in the world is objectively good or bad. Nothing in the world is objectively beautiful or ugly. Everything in the world just kind of like just is as it is, and we use our internal world to build a whole other world on top of it, and that is the version of the world that we see. I think that's so mind-blowing that like our subjective experience creates our entire reality. So the way that I see the world, the way that I see a room will be totally different to you based on our different life contexts and our different experiences, or even, you know, my mood that day, your mood that day. Okay, to illustrate this idea, I want to take you through a little visualization. I want you to imagine that me, you, and two of our friends are walking through Hyde Park in England. It's a pleasant day. It's not raining, which is rare for London. We're kind of walking along, we're chatting about our lives. Maybe we look over, we see the lake in Hyde Park. And then in the distance, we start to come to this tree, and the tree has very dark bark. It's kind of gnarled. It looks like quite an old tree. It's kind of like hanging over in a certain way. And when I see the tree, my instant reaction is, I don't like this tree. Something about it is unsettling, or I just find it ugly. Maybe I'm in a bad mood that day, and just something about this tree, I don't feel warm feelings towards it. But maybe you see the exact same tree, and you know, it reminds you of this memory of the exact same species of tree that your grandma had in her garden, and you see it and you just associate it with such positive feelings of love and warmth and childhood memories, and you just think it's such a wonderful tree, and maybe you don't even realize why. And then the third person that we're with casually is a tree surgeon, and so they see the like gnarled bark, and maybe they look at it and they think, oh, this tree has a disease like crown galls, and so their instant reaction to this tree is how it should be treated, and kind of a logical response to what can be done for this tree. And then maybe the fourth person grew up in the middle of the city with kind of never really seeing nature as something to look at. Nature is just something that exists in the background. And so the tree just completely blends away for them. And in that example, it's crazy because the tree is technically the same tree, right? It's exactly the same. We're all witnessing it at the exact same moment in time. And yet all of our feelings towards that tree are completely different based on our life experiences, how we're feeling that day, and like what we bring to that stimuli. And I think that's just such a wonderful metaphor for everything that we see and do in life. Nothing is objectively bad or stressful or should be done in a certain way. Like absolutely everything in our lives is kind of just an opinion that we hold and we create and we add on top of the external world based on, you know, societal programming, how we're raised, many things. And so this idea of casual magic is a process of you trying to create a new tool to see the world through a new lens. It's trying to ask you to see that tree and to always find something that could be perceived as beautiful about it. Maybe you use your imagination to think of like the birds in this tree in the spring and how beautiful they'd be, or you just look at the bark and you just, I don't know, you just appreciate the texture and the color, and yeah, you're really just trying to find something to be grateful for within every part of your day. We bring an entire complex mind of experiences to everything we see and do in the world. And so nurturing our inner worlds is literally changing how we're able to perceive the external world. To me, finding casual magic in your everyday is literally taking that ownership back and trying to find beauty in things that might even seem bleak. It's the ability to construct our own worlds through this habit that invites us to view things in a different way. And maybe it is the Pisces in me. And if you hate astrology, don't click off. Like, it's just my guilty pleasure, don't be mean. But I truly believe that we all have imaginations. No matter how far gone you are into adulthood, we are all ex-babies. We are all ex-children. Like, do you remember that feeling of like having a cardboard box when you were a child and like imagining that it could literally be anything? Like this could be a spaceship, this could be like a fort in the forest. Like we all have that imagination, and it's just kind of like beaten out of us as we go through the world. And you know, the world prioritizes our rational minds more than our imaginative, creative selves. And for me, casual magic is taking back that ownership to construct our worlds again with a little dose of imagination. One of my favourite books recently has been Anam Cara by John O'Donoghue, who was an incredible Irish philosopher, and he spoke a lot about the idea of Celtic spirituality in old Celtic folklore, and he speaks a lot about beauty and how empowering it is, like finding beauty in our lives and how much it enriches our devotion to the everyday. So here's a little quote from him that I found very special.
Beauty isn't all about just nice loveliness, like. Beauty is about more rounded, substantial becoming. So I think beauty in that sense is about an emerging fullness, a greater sense of grace and elegance, a deeper sense of depth, and also a kind of homecoming for the enriched memory of your unfolding life.
Guys, as this podcast goes on, you're going to get to know me a lot more, and it really is my intention to offer up some of my stories and experiences and vulnerabilities on a plate. And I really want to share 2 stories of how casual magic has been really important for me. One of them, a kind of more like achievement focused lens, like hustle, someone who's like high achiever, hustly, and kind of how I've realized more and more as I've gotten older that the real joy in life does not come from just achieving things, but from really going inward and taking time to appreciate the joy in every single day. And another story from a much more personal lens of my life and how looking for the joy in little moments has been very useful in tough moments. I was a workaholic. In some ways, still have those tendencies. I went to a university where I had to write minimum a 2,000 word essay every single week, on top of having all my classes, having a mini internship in every city, and also relocating my life for study abroad every 4 months. It was crazy. And in my second year of university, I was silly enough to say yes to a book deal, which was just like the craziest opportunity to have been offered by a publisher, and was a concept for a book that I really wanted to write. Like I'd literally put in my diary in my gap year that this was a book that I wanted to create. But I just shouldn't have said yes at that moment in time, because in my second year, I somehow needed to write an entire manuscript for this book, on top of juggling essays, on top of juggling, the social dynamics. I lived with 2 roommates in my bedroom, like physically in my bedroom. So trying to like write parts of my book was done in a space where 2 people were also occupying it and just trying to live their lives. So it was a stressful time. Also, COVID was starting. So it's just a lot going on, and I found myself getting quite bogged down in this mindset of there's so much I have to do, like to-do lists, and just like romanticizing how good everything would feel once it was finally done and I'd finally written the book and everything was out there. And I kind of just stopped enjoying the process. I stopped enjoying the fact that I was lucky enough to study in Seoul in Korea and got to live with these incredible people, and that I had all these wonderful opportunities and got to learn. And for me, oh my God, the ability to focus on the casual magic on a stressful day, that was a habit that really changed my life when I needed it. Like there were days where I would just be on a laptop for like 10 hours and sort of just going along the motions of ticking things off my to-do list. But in the moments where I could take even just 1 minute or 1 moment to like zoom out and get this perspective on my life, to be like, oh my gosh, Jade, look where you are. Look how far you've come. Look how you're like living out your dreams, you know? Like the zooming out technique would be so helpful to give myself perspective in those moments. Or I could also zoom in, right? Like I could focus on like the tea that I'm drinking at this cafe, or the ambience around me, or a really lovely conversation that I had with a friend. And I think in inviting myself to notice those moments of non-doing, I would give the non-doing just as much weight and priority as the doing. So I'd no longer be just celebrating the hustle of ticking off all these tasks, but I'd be really appreciating and celebrating just like the moments of richness in the rest of my life. And if you are someone who has a lot to do right now, maybe work is crazy, maybe university is crazy, maybe just your personal life is crazy, maybe there's just so much in your head and it feels like your own joy and pleasure in this world is like the absolute last priority, I really invite you to take just tiny moments of check-ins where you try and find something to give you joy, because actually the more that you do that, the better that everything else will also go. The better you'll be at ticking those things off. The richer the rest of your life will feel, the more clarity you'll have to face those challenges. Yeah, you never have to wait to allow yourself to feel joy. You can always find joy right here, right now. The second story of where casual magic has been quite important for me is, I talked about it a little bit on a podcast that I was interviewed on Meditative Story, but my mum struggled a lot with her mental health when I was a teenager, and particularly struggled with like alcohol as a coping mechanism. And she's okay with me talking about it now. She's thankfully she's been 7 years sober, which is so impressive. And yeah, it's been such a journey of learning about like our relationship through this healing process, and also like gaining so much empathy for what it means to struggle with one's mental health and to look for ways to cope with that. But yeah, when I was a teenager and she was going through those things, I had no empathy. I had no compassion. I was, in my own world. I was a stressed teenager, and yeah, it's really hard when a loved one is struggling to know what to do. Like I would kind of just want her to figure things out and to just be happy, to just switch and be positive and be like the other mothers who would bring friends around to the house. And I just didn't really understand her. And sometimes when my house felt very chaotic, literally the thing that I looked forward to the most was coming into my bedroom and closing the door and feeling like, wow, this room is my hideaway, my safe space, my place of calm. And I talk a lot about herbal tea and how important it is for me, but for me that really was my casual magic during those times, like the ability to sit there with a mug of tea and feel this sense of peace amidst the turbulence. And if you're going through anything similar or difficult with people you love, I really hope that you create these moments of softness with yourself to find a place of inner peace, because it can be so difficult. If you're struggling with your mental health, if anyone you know is, it's easy to get lost in a world of heaviness, and it's just important to reprioritize yourself in appreciating the little things. After all this talk of casual magic, you guys know that I had to share what my casual magic of the week is. And this is always going to be one of the last segments of the podcast episodes where I reflect on a moment of casual magic in the week. And I invite you to do the same. So for me, it's really easy for me to define my casual magic this week. Okay, so on Monday, I went and worked in a cafe in the morning, and there was this older woman next to me, and she was reading a book that I really love. It's called The Untethered Soul, and she was so cute. She was reading it with a giant magnifying glass, and I was meant to be doing my work, I was meant to be ticking off tasks, but when you just feel so compelled to speak to someone. I'm a very intuitive person, and I just felt like I would really regret if I didn't say something to her. And so I just tapped her on the shoulder and I said, oh, excuse me, I just wanted to say I loved this book that you're reading. And she was so sweet. She was like, oh, come here and I'll read you a passage. And so I sat there and this 85-year-old woman read me a passage of The Untethered Soul. And then we had a really meaningful conversation about her life story. And it kind of just reminded me of this idea that strangers are only strangers until you speak to them. You know, like you actually never know when a stranger will transition into a friend or someone that you need to meet. And it was just such a casually magic moment on that Monday. And yeah, I've made a new friend. And now we're going to listen to a casual magic from one of you guys.
Hello Jade, my name's Francesca and my goodness, I'm so excited for your podcast. This is so cool. I love that I'm sending you this. So, my casual magic this week has been some discount flowers. I actually decided to get 2 bunches on this rainy weekend morning, and I thought maybe they'll just last for a day or so, but they'll bring some joy up until then. Even when I got the flowers, like petals were falling off to the point where the cashier seemed uncertain whether to sell them to me. What then happened throughout the next week is the most gorgeous flowers bloomed, and each night when I went to sleep I would wake up to find another flower that had blossomed. I get flowers often, but I don't always have that experience with them, and they actually had so much longevity, more than they were estimated to have. Really sweet to have them in my life, especially when they were about to go in the bin. And it was such a sweet, exciting experience seeing the beauty in something that may seem broken to others.
And welcome to the final moment of the podcast, intention setting. So this is a moment that I want to create at the end of every episode where we both just kind of reflect on our weeks. And I used to do this with my roommate at university all the time, and it was so important to just celebrate our little wins, so we kind of maybe notice the moments of challenge and to really use that reflection to set an intention for our coming weeks that would serve us. So for example, if I had a really stressful week, lots going on at university, kind of got behind on routines, then maybe my intention for the next week would be peace or like routine. And then I could, put things in my journal in a way that would help me plan. So especially if you're listening to this at the end of the week, coming into your next week, then it's a perfect moment. Feel free to grab a journal, open your notes app, wherever you want to do your reflection. You could also just think about it in your head if you don't have anywhere to write. Okay, first, I want you to ask yourself, what went well this week? What am I proud of? What is a little win that I can celebrate? Secondly, what is something that maybe challenged me this week? What is something that I would change coming into next week? And then, based on these reflections, choose a one-word intention for your coming week. Okay, so for me, this has been a week of being on it. I've just been on it. I've been ticking things off. I've felt on top of my deadlines and things, and even starting this podcast, guys, is terrifying. There's so much stuff to sort in the back end. It's it's so scary. And I think I need to do the opposite of what I did this week. This mindset of tick, tick, tick. The intention that I want to carry into next week is softness. I'm due to start my period probably tomorrow, and I like to try and honour living by my menstrual cycle wherever I can, and allowing myself to really have that space to live softer and more mindfully when my body craves it. So that's my word for next week, softness. What is yours? If you want to, you can send it to me on Instagram on the DM feature. Guys, I am genuinely so grateful that you found yourself to this first episode. You found yourself here in this little safe space corner of the internet. And if no one has told you today, please remember that you are enough. You're enough exactly as you are right now. Whether you've achieved all your dreams or whether you haven't, you are enough. And I hope you can find a little casual magic today. Lots of love, and I cannot believe that next week, who am I going to be interviewing? Oh my god, I think I'm interviewing Ruby Granger, who is one of my best friends and has so much richness and stories to tell, and gosh, she knows how to find joy in her everyday life. So definitely stay tuned for that, and I can't wait to just allow this space to grow. Can't wait for you guys to come along on the journey with me, and it would also mean the world if you could leave a little review, give me a little 5 stars or something. That would literally mean the world if you made it to this point. Or also join the community on Instagram. Stay tuned and stay magical. Thank you so much. Bye.